Let's go. We made it to week 2 of training camp and the pads are coming on. So who was able to take advantage of a little extra physicality and make sure they're getting noticed? In this video, we'll go over the latest happenings around the Eagles, look at Ty Robinson's welcome to the NFL moment, and break down the competitions at cornerback and safety. Plus, rookie Drew Mukuba popped up on the injury report, but there's no reason to be concerned. So let's talk about that, a few other under-the-radar players worth mentioning, and why Jalen Hurts let the offense hear it. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? Week 2, and guess what that means? The pads are coming on. Although technically, the Birds just started out with shells and will be going to full pads on Tuesday. However, before we get into that, I gotta give a shout out to Lane Johnson for making the 99 overall rating club in Madden, meaning the Eagles are the only team in the game with 2 players in that exclusive club. Yet as great as that is, the best part might have been seeing Saquon share the news with Lane.
Got a surprise for you. Should have been one. Nah, should have been one longer time, but you're in the 99 club now. So.
Dang! Chain and all.
Yes, sir. 4th Eagle. All time.
Look, I get to some people that they're like, man, this is a video game, why does it matter? But if you hear the Eagles players talking about it, go over anywhere on social media, it's a big deal to them. So that's why I say congrats to them. After all, they're finally getting the respect they deserve. Although honestly, the bigger recent recognition has got to be Cooper DeJean coming in as the 60th best player on the NFL Top 100 list.
I'm in the top 100? Really? That's, I mean, I don't even know what to think. That's pretty cool.
The fact that that was his reaction when he was told that he made the list is just perfect. I mean, at 22 years old, a Super Bowl champion and the best slot corner in the NFL, life's pretty good. But even though there wasn't a better graded player in the NFL playing the nickel last season, it's still kind of insane to be voted the 60th best player in the league. Like, think about this. The 40th player drafted in the 2024 NFL Draft is already voted as the 60th best player in the league by his peers. Come on, you understand how crazy that is for that kind of recognition and progression? Which I guess only makes sense in year 2 for A.J. Brown to dub him APC for All-Pro Coop. Especially seeing that defensive coordinator Vic Fangio plans on using DeJean at safety and cornerback in addition to nickel this year. Now, obviously, I think that most of us would agree that Coop deserves that sort of recognition, but again, I would go back to at least, we don't see this normally nationally, but to get some of that respect, Philly's now getting it, as opposed to not what's going on in Dallas. Granted, tight end Jake Ferguson did sign a new 4-year extension, making him the 7th highest paid tight end in the league, getting an additional $30 million in guaranteed money. Of course, I understand you may be wondering how on earth is this relevant, and it is because Jerry Jones still can't get something done with Micah Parsons. Meanwhile, the optics don't look good considering the argument about not wanting to shell out too much guaranteed money when players get injured. Yet to make matters worse for the Cowboys circus, Jerry was asked about Chance at training camp telling him to pay Micah Parsons, to which he responded saying it was a faint little sound compared to what fans were saying about CeeDee Lamb last year.
Do you hear yourself when you talk?
Nothing better than playing favorites and pitting players against each other whenever you already have one disgruntled player who wants a contract. However, as off the rails as all that sounds, seeing it take place might be even better.
I was shocked last year.
Hey, Michael!
The record that we had. I never saw that coming. I want you to know, and I want you to look forward as you watch practices this week. I want you to watch what we've done.
I'm sorry, but they're literally like a reality show every single update. And if you've seen any footage or recaps about their training camp sessions, then you know that it really is a circus.
Joke. Top of a joke.
Meanwhile, in Washington, you got Terry McLaurin, who did finally show up to camp, but is electing to take the hold-in approach while he waits for a new contract. Again, I won't bore you with the details, but if it wasn't blatantly obvious before, the Eagles just take care of business, and that only increased with the pads coming on Monday. Albeit, as I mentioned, technically that was just the shells and shorts, and the pads will be coming on, at least the full pads, on Tuesday. But the positive news and the relief is that Jalen Carter was finally on the field and got in some work after sitting out the entire first week due to a shoulder injury. Which, as I'd been saying, he was always going to get out there and be fine, but maybe he got a little extra motivation knowing Tyler Booker is the for sure starter at guard for the Cowboys now. Remember, Booker, Dallas's first-round draft pick this year, called out JC specifically as the guy he was most looking forward to playing this season. And with the unfortunate news of Cowboys guard Rob Jones breaking a bone in his neck on Sunday that'll require him to be out 2 to 3 months, the Rook appears set to get his wish.
Instantly, I regret saying that.
One more thing, I'm not sure what it says about Rob Jones getting the first team reps over Tyler Booker. Granted, yes, sometimes you have rookies slow play it and get in there, but it's not the same instance or the case of the Eagles where they're dealing with rookies having injuries and trying to kind of rehab and get them back on the field. But speaking of those injuries, Drew Mukuba did miss Monday's practice due to a shoulder injury that he suffered at the very end of practice on Saturday when he collided with wide receiver Danny Gray. Now, fortunately, though, it does not sound like anything major and just another reason to exercise caution when seeing some people out there try to blow things way out of proportion.
You can act like a man. What's the matter with you?
Of course, now that I brought that up, as you might expect, it did bring into light at least the thought or question of, do the Eagles need to go get a safety? And yeah, if Howie Roseman were to make a move, it'd probably be within the next couple weeks. Because even if it's only for a week or two that Mukuba's out, those are valuable reps that might influence a potential signing. But remember, I'll be going live if anything happens, if we do sign somebody, so make sure to subscribe and turn the notifications on so you don't miss anything. Now, like I said, thankfully, the injury to Mukuba is not season-ending, but we've talked about this before on live streams. It does feel like, one of the main things, if the only thing that stops or prohibits the Eagles from going as far as we think they can, is if they get hit by the injury bug. Yet while the Eagles may have dodged a bullet there, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers weren't so lucky, with the Bucs revealing that rookie outside linebacker David Walker suffered a torn ACL over the weekend and will undergo season-ending surgery. Now, obviously, you never want to see any injuries regardless of the team, but it's especially noteworthy considering that the fourth-round pick out of Central Arkansas had been showing a lot of promise early in camp. And given the news there, that adds another player that the Bucs won't have when the Eagles play them in Week 4 in Tampa. Remember, the first big blow is left tackle Tristan Wirfs, who the Bucs started out on the PUP list with a knee injury. And assuming the initial timeline keeps up throughout camp, then the All-Pro will miss the first 4 weeks of the season. Granted, even though that may help things for the Birds, we all remember what a hot, humid game in the late September in Tampa can do for you. Therefore, Sirianni decided to push the guys Monday for one of their longest sessions they've had and on what happened to be the hottest day of the summer. Also, to no surprise, a lot of the initial work was focused on fundamentals and trying to hone in on technique, since Sirianni stressed the foundation of winning at the basics before chasing home runs or anything crazy. And having said that, it is pretty cool how the head coach is always open to trying out new drills and adding in elements for whatever can make the guys better.
We focus on doing the ordinary better, and so we were pretty good in our missed tackles last year, but we wanted to take even a bigger step. And I think, that drill started off as a thought for contested catch, but also now it's something that we know is going to help us become a better tackling team. Again, like I said, all those things are what lead to the spectacular plays that we love and see so much on it. But it's you can't see, like, for instance, Saquon wins the ESPY for best play last year. Well, if you watch that, Jalen gets to his fifth read. That's an ordinary thing. The blocking up front, the double team that's happening on the nose, lane one-on-one blocking on the outside, all those things contribute to that. And so we understand. We just want to do ordinary better.
If you think about last season pre-bye week compared to post-bye week, that's really what it comes down to. Do ordinary better. After all, Philly was ranked as one of the worst tackling teams in the entire league and had one of the worst turnover differentials after their defeat to Tampa in Week 4. However, after doubling down on their process and fundamentals, the Birds were able to finish the season as the best tackling team and one of the best teams in terms of turnover differential. So yeah, with a year under their belt, confidence in having done that, and visibly turning the page to focus on this season, I don't see why they can't be as good, if not better. Again, all that comes down to injuries. Where Week 2 of training camp started out with Danny Gray being held out with a finger, Smile Munden held out because he was sick, Drew Mukuba with a shoulder we talked about, and Devonta Smith who didn't force it and sat out with back tightness. Meanwhile, as for the limited players, it was Jahan Campbell with a shoulder, Jalen Carter also with a shoulder, Quinyon Green with a knee, and Cam Jurgens with his back. Although despite some injuries on both sides, the defense pretty handily beat the offense in most drills on Monday, with one of the few exceptions being during one-on-one drills, like when A.J. Brown caught a couple passes against Quinyon Mitchell. But come on, like everyone knows, there's not a cornerback in the league that doesn't struggle to keep up with AJ. It's why he was first place by a mile when it comes to grades for wide receivers versus man coverage. Anyway, moving on, so later rookie Jihaad Campbell got some work against the running backs, but it was fairly one-sided, as Will Shipley shook him loose on back-to-back reps before Campbell ended up getting flagged for holding against Keelan Robinson. Yeah, we'll just say this, the rook's learning, he ended up getting some push-ups afterward to show his frustration for how poor the rep was. Meanwhile, a couple of the other notable takeaways were seeing Eli Riggs with a good physical coverage on Johnny Wilson to force an incompletion. Although wide receiver Elijah Cooks probably had the highlight from that portion, going up for a jump ball over Adoree Jackson and coming down with a catch. With the play being so impressive that Jackson actually clapped afterward to show respect for him.
I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
Well, like I said, the offense may have made a few plays there, but other than that, the defense pretty much won out. Where on the first team drills of the day, it was Adoree Jackson at cornerback, Cooper DeJean playing safety, and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. next to Zach Bond. I should mention, though, that was in base. Whenever they shifted back to nickel, it was still Cooper DeJean getting those reps at the nickel, and then Sidney Brown was the one getting first-team reps at safety. Anyway, it was tough going for Jalen and the offense, as several instances resulted in incompletions, delayed throws, or just miscommunication altogether. To be fair, Cam Jurgens did caution everyone, asking about it after practice not to freak out, because while the defense has their entire playbook installed, remember, the offense is barely getting started and still installing the basics. Either way, that didn't stop QB1 from letting the offense hear it. As John Clark said, Jalen Hurts was very vocal after some mistakes from the first team. Not gonna lie, I appreciate hearing the leadership and motivation from Jalen, but unfortunately, not much changed as Quinyon Mitchell then came away with the first interception of training camp on Jalen Hurts. And shout out to Zach Berman, who shared that Q pulled down a one-handed INT on the play despite the ball being underthrown a bit. Which, let's remember, Mitchell didn't register an interception until the postseason last year. But it's like Slay said when talking about Q last season, takeaways come with time for young quarterbacks when tracking the ball. But I think we just call it what it is at this point. Q is answering every single challenge they throw at him. And heck, that's with he and Kelee Ringo switching sides in the middle of the drill to get used to the either side. Like, I know Coop's got the nickname APC for All-Pro Coop, but Q is no doubt in that same category. And to think this secondary is only getting better, which really paid dividends, and a case in point for that rep was whenever ESP shared that Jalen held onto the ball for 8 seconds and still had nobody open. At the same time, I saw some people arguing about this. It's true, Smitty was not out there, Devonta Smith makes a big difference, but the defense is also dealing with injuries, limited guys that are out of action, so it kind of goes both ways. Anyway, that turnover started a chain reaction as Kyle McCord was later picked off by cornerback Tariq Castro-Fields, followed by rookie Mac McWilliams breaking up a pass intended for Johnny Wilson in the back of the end zone from Tanner McKee. And just saying, but McWilliams is 5'10", going up against 6'6" or 6'7" Johnny Wilson, so making plays like that is a great sign for Mac. On the flip side, you're right, probably not the best sign, seeing that Johnny Wilson with that height, with that mismatch, cannot capitalize. And then you kind of add into it that he played the way that he did for the first week, kind of up and down. He's got some work to do. Although when it comes to Ainias Smith, he got reps filling in as the wide receiver 3 with Jahan Dotson moving outside due to Devonta being out. Now, for the record, there weren't any crazy plays made from Ainias, but he was able to shake free from Cooper DeJean a couple times. And honestly, just seeing him get the nod in the backup situation bodes well for his chances of making the roster. Also, one additional aspect that can't be overlooked is the chemistry between QB1 and J-Dot, with Jahan referencing a very visible increase in their trust this season.
I was actually down there training with a former teammate of mine at Penn State, Parker Washington. And obviously that's where Jalen's from. And, I hit him up, told him I was in the area, and we connected pretty much every week. So it was real good just to be around him and, get with him and build that trust.
I continue to say this, but while I don't expect anything crazy, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say Jahan Dotson close to 1,000 receiving yards, but I do anticipate him having a little bit of a bigger role. Obviously, that trust comes into factor there with Jahan Dotson. So, keep an eye out for it. Definitely better than last year. And I'm also curious to see if Dallas Goedert gets a little more attention too. I mean, on a day when the offense kind of struggled, one of the few bright spots was the connection with Dallas Goedert, as Jalen hit Dallas for about 20 yards to keep their targets and catches perfect so far through camp. Of course, that bright spot was sandwiched between a bevy of sacks from the defense. Like Jeff Mosher shared, the defense got the best from the offense as the quarterbacks held onto the ball too long, were running out of the pocket, and more balls were hitting the ground than usual. Oh yeah, and that was courtesy of Azeez Ojulari sacking Tanner McKee on a 4th down play, Jihaad Campbell picking up a sack of his own on a 4th and goal situation, as well as Moro Ojomo continuing to wreak havoc in the backfield for a sack during 11-on-11s.
He works just as hard as anybody on this team and puts a lot of effort in, and not just in the weight room, but just on the field. I mean, he puts in a lot of time, and he was kind of like a little pest to deal with his first year here. He just worked and played so hard, and now he's got a lot of those tools, and he's a lot stronger than he was, and just talking from Fletch and BG and learning from them guys, like all those little tips and tricks, and I mean, he's tough to go against now. Really tough.
Gives me all the confidence. It also gives me confidence to go versus the best offensive line here. A lot of guys don't get to ramp up into training camp and deal with this. I know every game's going to be easy once you go versus this offensive line. Obsessed with evolving. That's my mindset. just always getting better, always taking a step forward, improving.
Fangio's talked about in the past how you're a little different defensive tackle, a little lighter than maybe most. How do you use that to your advantage?
I use it in many ways. I think I strike like I'm big and I move like I'm small.
There's not even a question at this point. Moro Ojomo has had the best camp so far out of any defensive player. I mean, every single time we come on here and do these updates, it's, hey, Big Bo, there's a sack, there's a pressure, there's something there. I mean, you guys tell me if I'm crazy. Let me know in the comments, but I could very realistically see him having a bigger season than Milton Williams did last year. Like, not only is he getting noticed by the O-line, but Ojomo shared that Fangio has been using him on the interior as well as out on the end to create some new looks. So yeah, this dude has the physicality, and it also says something if Fangio is starting to use him in multiple roles. But when it comes to the cornerback battle, there appears to be momentum building of Adoree Jackson starting to very slightly edge Kelee Ringo, as the veteran corner again got the first reps at cornerback, with Dave Zangaro sharing of one pass breakup against Terrace Marshall down the field, and then even had a good rep in coverage against A.J. Brown. But for the record, Ringo also got in several first-team reps and did fine, before Jackson actually injured his finger and had to leave the field. By the way, I haven't seen any updates on this yet, but I'll keep you guys posted as soon as we hear anything about Adoree Jackson there. Also, I've said to pump the brakes, don't overreact. I'm not doing that on this side either, but in terms of the slight advantage, I'm going based off of multiple media reports, beat writers there in coverage, and saying that, Ringo's not getting as many first-team reps, he's not starting. But we saw the same thing with Isaiah Rodgers last year. We remember he was getting those first-team reps, and then all of a sudden Q takes over there. Heck, Kelee Ringo was getting some of those, so I'm not going to go overboard and be like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, Kelee Ringo has no chance. After all, it's not like we want any injuries to happen, but maybe that gives Kelee more chances to try to take it and run with a job. Just like Sidney Brown is trying to do with the extra reps so far at camp. With one instance in particular getting the coach's attention when Brown jumped an underneath throw from Tanner McKee and should have been able to pick it off. However, the positive, even though he dropped it, was that he still got a pass breakup and showed his ability to read the play and anticipate. Granted, while Sid was doing that, Ty Robinson probably just got his welcome to the NFL moment. Or at least when it comes to practice, he did, when he got matched up with Jordan Mailata and the Australian proceeded to stand up the rookie and hold him there for at least 5 seconds, if not longer. And yeah, not great, but it is Jordan Mailata after all. Yet the part that probably isn't as excusable is when he failed to hustle after a football later and then received an earful from D-line coach Clint Hurt. FYI, the Vanilla Gorilla did show a powerful club against Laken Vakalai and got into the backfield quickly on another rep, with the Athletic noting how well Robinson used his hands. So it wasn't a total loss, but to me, look, we got to be patient. Same thing here. He's a rookie. He's going to have some good reps, some bad reps. It's there for them to test themselves, figure things out. There's no reason to give up on him if some people are going like, oh my gosh, he had a bad day. Same thing applies for a lot of these guys. Heck, it just takes time, and that's what happened with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. But now he's making plays constantly in the run and even turning heads with his recent play in coverage. I mean, overall, the team is just making each other better. And look, even despite some losses early at the right guard spot, Tyler Steen very clearly remains at the top of the depth chart.
Just working with the people here, doing some other things in the off season, like working on your feet, working on posterior chain, just different things like that I think really helps when you're playing just O-line in general, stopping bull rushes, moving people in the run game, so things like that, yeah.
Also, to try to keep this thing in perspective more and end on a positive note, got a lot of questions about Kevin Patullo's offense. What's going to change? Will we keep motion? Will we have more motion? And it sounds like we will, as tight end Grant Calcaterra confirmed the speculation.
With Kevin's offense, is it a lot different?
Yeah, it's early. I think one of the biggest things we're doing right now is using motion, getting guys in different places and trying to, marry things off each other to kind of make everything look similar and keep the defense on their toes.
There we go. First day of week 2 in the books. Defense definitely won the battle, but let me know your thoughts, your takeaways, who else you want to hear more from, everything else from camp. A reminder, the Eagles practice again Tuesday before an off day Wednesday, and then back to practice on Thursday and Friday. As always, I'll have the recaps each day, so make sure to like and subscribe. Tune in then. I'll catch you next time. This has been the Philly Special.
Like I should feel like